The Tech It Up Talk podcast aspires to educate, inform, and inspire educators from teachers to school leaders on tips, tools, and resources to support the integration of technology into classroom instruction.
You ready? Here we go.
You're listening to Tech It Up Talk with Dr. Mac, your host with the most passion for supporting educators from teachers to school leaders, the integration of technology into instruction. Welcome back for another episode of Tech It Up Talk. In today's episode, we have an exciting one. I have a special guest, and we're going to be discussing accessible, differentiated, and personalized learning for all. And our guest today is Sherri Powell, who is also a contributing author in the book, Get Your Tech Together, with me and some other instructional leaders. And so she's an educational trailblazer who sparks innovation in teaching with the passion for empowering educators and embracing technology. She leads transformative initiatives in her region, leaving an indelible mark on professional development. Backed by advanced degrees, Sherri's 24 years of expertise in fostering active student engagement has shaped the future of education. Beyond the classroom, her recognition for best implementation of digital curriculum and insightful articles solidify her as a thought leader. So I'm super excited today to have Miss Sherri Powell on and joining us. And so, Sherri, if you can just tell me more about this article.
Well, it was an honor to actually write the article. What I did discover is that there has definitely been a need in our districts, our charters for blended learning. And my department and we actually had an opportunity to apply for a grant through the Charles Butt Foundation. And they are based out of Austin, Texas. And through their support, and Raise Your Hand Texas, another organization, we actually were able to participate in some workshops, some initiative showcases where we got to visit some campuses that were rolling out blended learning or had been doing some of the work. And what this would allow us to do is to bring that learning back to our campuses here in the greater Houston area. When it came to on-time support, coaching, and training for those districts and charters. And so this article actually came to be because Tech and Learning organization had reached out to me. I had recently won an award from them back in July, and so proud of that. But they said, hey, we want to know about the work that you guys are doing. So could you write about it? So that's kind of how that happened. And what better topic to write about than blended learning? So this article is actually called The 5 Pillars of Blended Learning. And really we're talking about that solid foundation for student success. And in that, I talk about the 5 pillars. Assessment, data-driven instruction. We talk about rigor. We talk about relationships. We talk about student agency and personalized instruction. And all those fall under blended learning.
Yes, and I'm glad that, that was a great segue into our topic today, because our topic, we're going to be talking about accessible, differentiated, and personalized learning for all. And me, those are all components that fit right into blended learning for best practices and supporting all students. Mm-hmm. So let's jump right in. All right, so let's talk about technology. And so how does technology integration contribute to making learning more accessible? And why is this particularly important in today's educational landscape?
I think it's very important. There's so many changes, from how and I say we, I'm talking about the students, how they considered us old and old school and old souls, and how we learned. We learned by paper, book, and pencil and pen. We didn't have technology at our fingertips. And so today, many of our students, we know that we're in a tech world. So they're learning from videos, whether it's YouTube or TikTok. They're learning from digital platforms. They're collaborating, they're communicating. So we as educators, we've had to kind of learn how to teach them from where they are. And that's where that tech integration comes in at, infusing that tech into learning. So it's going to be beyond that book. It's going to be beyond that, paper and pencil. Because we're in this tech world and because we know that technology is a powerful tool for learning and teaching, we have to best utilize it. To best utilize it, we have to learn how to adapt learning to meet our students' needs. And when I say students, we're talking about all students.
I love that. All students. A lot of times we teach to a group and we know that our learners are different. Each one, even us as learners are different. We all learn, receive information and process it in different ways. And so I love that. All right. So as you just shared, technology offers so many tools, platforms that, as we as educators have to continue to adapt with. How can educators effectively use technology to implement differentiated instruction and kind of cater to the individual needs of their students?
I think first and foremost, we have to make sure that tool is safe. Vetting the tool. We can go to conferences and workshops and attend trainings and learn about the latest and greatest. And the question that we have to ask ourselves as educators is it safe? Is it, something that's going to protect my child, my student, from the outside negatives that can come in, such as the phishing, such as, different dangers that are out there, stealing their information, being careful with their PII, and so to speak. But with those different tools, I guess my first piece of advice is to check it out, to vet that tool. And then discover if that tool is actually going to be useful for that student or those groups of students. How do you know that? You need to assess your students. You need to discover, what it is about them and how you can actually reach and teach them where they are. And will that tool that you've chosen, because they got so many tools out there, is that going to be that tool for you to go to educate that student? What's going to work best for the student? That teacher will know that. Even the student, when they get in, you have to know your students, so to speak, be able to match them up with that tool.
Awesome. Awesome. And this is where personalized learning kind of comes in, but sometimes I think it's really hard for teachers and even some of our school leaders to understand like what is personalized learning. And so like how does technology, I guess, play that pivotal role in being able to create a customized learning experience for a student?
Well, for one, after you've vetted that tool, after you discovered like, okay, this could work for my students. This might be the go-to. For an example, take Nearpod. Students can interact with the Nearpod lesson. They can answer questions. They could do drag and drop. They can do all sorts of things based on what the teacher sets up in that lesson. And there's some lessons that they can just go and get, that's readily available based on the topic they're covering. But on the back end, the beauty behind using Nearpod, on the back end, teachers are able to analyze that data. They get data on the back end. And so from that data, they can see what the students struggled on. They can see, where they may need support. Same thing with tools such as quizzes, Quizalize, game-based assessment tools. So technology actually allows teachers to use. So those fun tools, and students, even though they may think they're playing games and having a blast in class, this is free time, that teacher is really using that data on the back end to help drive that instruction. And when she's thinking about or he's thinking about driving instruction, that means they're taking that data. They're seeing where that student fell short. And they say, okay, I need to up my teaching ante in this area. Or they see that student that's well advanced and needs to be challenged even more. And they can take that and they can alter the lesson the next go round. So that technology, it actually allows that. We couldn't do that with book, paper, and pencil back in the day. So we saw what they did. We checked it off. Oh, they missed this. They missed this. They missed this. How often did our teachers back then take those papers that they graded and went through, like, okay, let me get my data off this sheet of paper. Oh, everybody missed number one. Did they actually take that data to drive the instruction? I don't think so. I didn't learn that way. I wish that those things were available when I was an actual classroom teacher or the teachers that I actually experienced. But technology has definitely allowed a lot. And so using that data to drive instruction is probably the most important. And then it also helped foster student engagement. Thinking about those students that may not be interested or sitting in the back of the class bored with their hands, up to their chin or the head down and may have sleep. They're bored. They're absolutely bored or they're tuned out, and you need something to engage those students. We're living in a world, like I said earlier, that students are into technology. So you have to bring the technology in.
I love it. And so, and even with trying to access the data, a lot of the programs that teachers use in class that gives them that data is very dynamic from the paper and pencil. So even if you were trying to collect data, say everyone missed number one or number two, or running those green scrantrons back in the day and get your tally up at the end, like it wasn't really dynamic information. They really can kind of quickly shape. Now we can really leverage even some of the tools we're using to assess with to quickly adapt and create small groups, or leverage the system to like analyze the teaks that were, or standards that were being used in the assessment in the first place, to quickly identify it without us physically having to go manually do it ourselves. And so, and leveraging that to kind of guide and lead instruction. So yeah, I love it. Can you share some examples of successfully how technology-driven initiatives or practices have effectively addressed diverse learning styles and abilities of students?
Um, okay, let's talk about accessibility, for instance. That's actually covered in the book. And so one thing that it has allowed is for teachers, after they have assessed their students, after they see, where the student needs more support or the most support, an example of that would also be thinking about that student as far as accessibility. We know that, personalized learning is definitely a eye opener when it comes to learning for students, and teaching learning for students is not a one size fit all. You cannot teach students the same way um, from one to the next. You really have to know your students and where they need the support and just meeting their needs. And all students needs, whether it's a need of more support or a need to be challenged. And so when you think about accessibility, you think about, no one could actually, even you and I, um, we wouldn't get behind in our learning if we had accessibility rolled into it. Accessibility can be as anything as simple as having the closed caption, you know, on your video screen. That helps a lot of students, students that may tend to tune out. Not that they have a hearing problem, but they may tune out and may get lost in the lecture. What better way to help them each actually keep up than having a closed caption? They may have missed a word or two, may tuned out and la la land. That happens. What about the transcript? Having them be able to see the transcript on videos, to take their notes alongside. That's another way. Students who may need actual a second screen or a second monitor or different things like that. So accessibility can come in so many different forms. And many of these features are actually on the computer that you don't have to pay for, that you don't have to download anything special. It's just a matter of turning them on. And so, just showing teachers that would be a good example of how they can actually, help with accessibility. Thinking about personalization, you can't talk about personalization without knowing the students, to make it personal for the students. What does that look like? An example of personalized for your students. Okay, you got the data. You see that Johnny is struggling in, his math facts. And so Johnny may needs a little extra support. So you can roll out a playlist, just a digital playlist, whereas it may look just like Sarah's and Jack and Jennifer. Everybody got the same document, same QR codes, same links. So it looks like. But because we know that Jack is struggling in his math facts, when Jack clicks on his particular link, it may go to another page or another website where he's actually getting more personalized learning. That way, it saves embarrassment. Jack does not feel signaled out. Everybody's document looks the same way, and they all think they're doing the same thing. And that's what I love about playlists. And that's one great way just to personalize learning because it's catered to Jack. It's catered to that student who might need that extra support, or it could be catered to that student who has to have that challenge. Otherwise, they check out. Otherwise, they're not engaged. And the other, just the differentiation piece. We talk about that in the chapter as well. And, an example of differentiation that, teachers could use would be also in the form of different assignments. They may have the same assignment, but just different levels of that assignment where that student that may need less of or more of that particular support. So many things, just so many different things, so many different tools that are out here that students and that they can use. But the biggest thing is teachers knowing their students.
Yeah, I was just thinking when you were talking, I was thinking about myself in this. It was like, even if I'm listening to someone, or if we're in a Zoom or a Google Meet, or any of those programs, I'm listening to someone speak because they're giving me information, but I'm not an auditory learner, and
Mhm,
so like I have to turn on the closed caption just to help me with processing what they're saying,
mhm,
because it helps me. Like sometimes people don't realize like you can listen and read at the same time. But it definitely helps me with processing information, especially if I'm really trying to get it versus
mhm,
just listening to it. And a lot of times we have our sage on the stage teachers who are they're doing a lot of talking.
mhm.
And like if it's another student is like me that's not an auditory listener or a learner, then it's challenging for us to process the information we have to, do along with that. And so I love it. So definitely considering your students and knowing who they are, what they are, and what their interests are in, and what their
Right.
needs are definitely important, and really designing a learning environment that can um, be personalized for all.
The other thing is just making sure that you understand, the different learning styles. Like you say, you're not an auditory learner. You may be more hands-on. I know that I am more hands-on. And so, if you're considering your students, think about how they feel. Think about, different modalities that are out there that, may work for me, but may not work for you. I'm okay with watching a video, but I'd rather watch a video that may have some questions in between, check for understanding. Don't give me a video that just plays all the way through and I got some questions at the end. I'm like, I don't remember that part. Oh, yeah, I checked out then. Oh, I missed that one. So, it's things like that that really stand out. Think about those students who are so used to gaming at home. Their mind is just focused on gaming and winning and competing. So think about those students who may really benefit and shine through interactive gaming. You know, that game, what does it look like? I mean, you have digital tools such as Book It, you have digital tools out there that you can put in game-based mode. Quizalize, for instance. Quizalize is actually one of my favorite digital tools when it comes to differentiating, for students. You can take a lesson or find a lesson um, that you can pull in that you created, or you can find ready-made lessons there. When the students actually go through the questions and answer sets, um, when they get to the end, the teacher have already predetermined, okay, if they score between here and there, they're going to be taken to this area. If they score between here and there, they're going to be taken to this area. And so those areas could be a PDF. It could be a video that the student may have to watch. It may be a document that they went over. It may be some digital notes that they've taken, just something to actually go back and reteach and relearn. And the students have access to that because the teacher has imported those resources in. After they're done with that, they can actually go back and play the game again. Students get a score. To turn that particular digital tool in a game based, where now they're competing. And even as a homework feature, where it's not a game at all, or they play against the computer. So just different things, different tools that are actually out there that, those students, you're meeting their needs, but you're also addressing their learning styles, their interests. And that's what's important, because that's what's going to get those students engaged. That's what's going to spark their interest and keep them motivated in learning.
Awesome. Now, I'm going to kind of transition this to talk about challenges, because I know we talk about a lot of things that teachers can do or administrators can support and implement, but we know that with that comes challenges. So what challenges might teachers or instructional coaches, leaders face when trying to integrate the technology for accessible, differentiated, and personalized learning? And how can these challenges be navigated?
Okay, well, a couple of things. First and foremost, one of the biggest challenges I know that many teachers that I work with or train, they talk about just inequitable sources of technology. You may be a campus that have these awesome digital tools. The district pays for it, or the campus, they may pay for it for you to actually use it, and not the freemium account. That's something that's inequitable across the board. So it just really depends on what district, what school you're at, as far as access. So let's talk about inequitable access. That's one challenge. Another challenge could actually be the physical tool, the computer, the laptop, that may not be as present or as equitable for a class set versus, 2-3 students or 1-to-1. So that could be another challenge, just having access to technology. But one of the bigger challenges, of course, could also be training, just the knowledge that teachers have. Many teachers have come up, our newer teachers, our young, vibrant, ready for the world teachers. They know it all. They coming in running with it. Whereas you have your more seasoned teachers that's been teaching 30, 40 years, and they're about burnt out, or I'm not learning anything new, and it's too much for me. There's too much technology for me. So that can definitely be a challenge. Just staying up on, the different digital tools and resources that are coming out. Technology is always evolving. So every week it's something new, AI, let's think about AI and how it's changing. Every week they're coming up with a new AI tool. And so that's another thing that we have to think about. Just that challenge of staying abreast on those new features and tools and things like that. So how can we navigate that? How can we get the support that we need?
Yes.
That's very important question. I would say definitely, teachers should reach out to their district and resources to see what's available. Your digital learning department, technology department, see if there's anything that's being offered. Region 4, if you're in our region, definitely reach out to us, digital learning department. We definitely can provide support and training. But your PLCs, start looking online for professional learning communities that may focus on differentiation, that may focus on accessibility, may focus on personalized or blended learning, things of that nature. And join those PLCs. Many of them are free. Start talking to other teachers, look on Twitter. There's so many out there that you can actually become a part of and get ideas for teaching, getting ideas for room arrangements and different things that you can do even where you are. So what is January? It's okay. You don't have to wait till our next school year to begin. Start implementing some things, you know, um, bit by bit, and see what articles, publications such as Tech and Learning. They always drop in, nice nuggets of, digital learning ideas and features and different things that you can use. And there's so many digital tools that are out there that are just for educators. And just simply as signing up with your educator email address, your district email address, will actually open the doors to many free tools versus your personal email address. That's something I'm definitely big on. Um, Reaching out to some of the vendors, say that you have fallen in love with Ed Puzzle or Nearpod or something like that, and you don't have a educator account or an account that's kind of wide open so you can use all of its latest and greatest features. Reach out to the vendor. Hey, I'm interested in your product and I've been using it with my kids. Give them a testimony of how it's been working out in your class. You would be surprised. You would be amazed at the vendors, how free they are when it comes to supporting educators. They want you to use their product and just let them know, hey, I don't have any money. I can't afford to pay for, a full subscription for a year, and just let them know. You'll be surprised. You have nothing to lose by asking.
You're right, because I call vendors all the time and help with supporting with, maximizing my department with access to different professional developments. And so they definitely want you to use your products. If you're not using their product, then the benefit is not there for all. So it definitely serves them to help support. But I want to add in another challenge that I see often that teachers face, and I think it's sometimes the leadership at the campus not knowing like what it looks like or feel like, or even their understanding. Because a lot of times we're training our teachers, and sometimes our teachers are actually trying to implement these things, but it's not in alignment with the vision or perspective that the leader that's running that campus may have an understanding of or be aware of. And so I want to invite all school leaders to make sure they have a strong understanding. It's not just about us getting the teachers their support. We need to make sure that they are also getting that same level of support, and they're going out and reaching out to vendors or joining different personal learning networks to help support them as well, because this is a collaborative effort. Although our teachers are boots to the ground, we need our leaders to kind of step up and make sure they're in tune with what those are, to be a coach, a support to our teachers as they're trying to navigate these spaces. And so I think that's a lot of challenge, because I see teachers do so many different things. And sometimes I think even from my own experience is why I'm probably so passionate about it. When I started using technology, leadership in spaces, that wasn't their thing. It wasn't like the norm on campus to use technology in this way. Although, technology integration and blended learning, it was starting to come around and become more popular, it wasn't adopted as a practice fully or understood. And so I really think it's a big gap that needs to be filled, because I think it would spearhead a lot of the challenges our teachers face, is when our leaders get on board with these strategies and understanding blended learning.
I totally agree with that. I would definitely have to add that the problem a lot of times, well, let's just say this, it starts at the top. There's so much power that you can have as a classroom teacher. You know that tool, that strategy, you've been using it with your students, you see that it's working, and you're struggling with administration. They think it's all games. They don't understand, where you're getting that data from and how you're getting it, by playing quizzes or something like that. And I often tell teachers when they say, "Oh, my leadership, they just don't understand, and they just, data, or things like that." And I said, "Okay," I say, "You know what? Let them play. Show them how to use it in, PD. Show them how to use it in a department meeting or whatever. Let them actually play. Let them actually experience it. A lot of leaders, they don't experience it, so they don't understand. And so getting them to experience it, that gives them that hands-on learning, that one-to-one learning, and, also invite them to your classroom. It really surprises a lot of administrators when the teacher is reaching out, hey, come to my class, check out what my students are doing, da 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 da. And then that way they're like, okay, let me see what Miss Jackson is doing. Let me go check it out. That way they can actually witness firsthand, students being engaged. They can see that, this is how Miss Jackson is getting that information, to drive the instruction. Explain it to them. One thing I always tell teachers when I'm doing game-based assessment training, showing them different, tools they can use, just game mode. I always tell them at the very beginning, I asked this question really. I said, if your principal walks into the classroom and you're playing Kahoot, what do you tell them when the principal asks, what are you doing? So, many times the teacher's like, oh, well, playing Kahoot, da, da. And that's all that principal hears. Playing. Okay? Playing. That's one thing. The other thing is playing Kahoot. So to that principal that does not understand game-based assessment, oh, they're just playing a game. And so I also told the teacher, I said, and never say that they're having free time. Oh, this is their free time. They finished their work for the day, so I'm just letting them play in Kahoot. Okay. This is what I tell the teachers they need to say. I said, you don't have to sound as formal as this, but some fashion or form, you need to explain to that principal, like, well, the students are actually engaging in a digital tool called Kahoot. And when they're done, I'm going to actually use the data to drive my instruction. With that data, I'm actually able to find out where my students are struggling at. I can find my students who need more support in this area, whatever you're working on, math, facts, or whatever. And I need to find out, what students really got this so that I can actually find ways to challenge them even more. And the teachers, they just look at me like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I said, and so that's how you get past the game-based assessment, with those administrators that think you're just playing games. Okay. And then I also show them how to turn off all those bells and whistles. You don't have to have all the music. You don't have to have the leadership board and things like that. That's extra. And you really want to be as serious with these students as you can. You can turn those things off and let that be a treat. Good behavior, whatever. Okay, I'll put the leadership board on. The students love to see that they're number one or second place or whatever. But like you say, Dr. Mack, it definitely starts at the top. And as far as getting those leaders in, my biggest piece of advice would be to give them that hands-on experience so that they can actually see what it looks and feels like and what they can get from it.
I tell you, experience matters. So yeah, I completely agree. And so let's go ahead and move on to our next segment. We co-authored a book called Get Your Tech Together already. And so this actual segment, that book was birthed out of this segment of the podcast called Get Your Tech Together. So we're going to talk about getting our tech together for accessible, personalized, and differentiated learning for all. And so if you can just share some tools that teachers, you kind of sprinkled them in a lot of the conversation already. But if you could just share some must-have tools that educators can have in their toolbox to support accessible, differentiated, and personalized learning for all.
Okay. Let's see. On the top of my head, I know I mentioned Nearpod. That's one good tool. Of course, you have Edpuzzle. And what I do like about those is that, they both can implement the video. You can both implement, the check for understanding and things like that. At the end of the day, you still get your resources, your data at the end to see how those students are doing or have done. Think about tools for creating playlists, creating choice boards, and those tools that you can actually implement into choice boards. You got formerly Flipgrid, where students can actually interact with a video, create a video, and explain their understanding of a topic. You have your gamification tools. You have quizzes. You have Quizalize. You have Kahoot. You have Look It. You have so many. You have your simulations. You have AR, VR, different tools and things like that. Think about those students and those diverse learners that you have that may need that particular interaction. They might need to see, what it actually looks like. Think about tools such as Seesaw, for our younger learners. In a sort of speak, this is kind of like their LMS, their learning management system. And this is something that those babies could actually do with their parents at home, importing their little videos or, doing their little drawings and things like that. And this is as early as pre-K kinder. So something for everybody. You have your creation tools for video, for audio that are out there, Adobe Express, Creative Cloud, that's free for educators. You have your Canva, that's free for educators. And in Canva, I'll be remiss if I didn't share that they have templates for choice boards, templates for playlists, templates for presentations and things like that, and so many different accessibility features built into all these tools that I've just mentioned that you can actually discover in the settings area that you can turn on, just like the Microsoft Immersive Reader. That's in many of the tools, so the students can actually have it more personalized for them, enlarging their text, changing the color of the text, those that have vision problems, having it read to them, so that they can better understand it, having a closed caption and things like that. I can go on and on, but there are so many tools out there. But the biggest thing, Dr. Mack, that we definitely have to share and cannot share enough is just making sure that the tools you use are safe for students to use.
I like that. A lot of times in the district I support, I have the pleasure of getting all the requests for all the software requests. And sometimes I have to say no. But, one of the things I've been trying to be intentional with is teaching and our teachers and our leaders understanding of SEPA and COPA to kind of help with facilitating a lot of those conversations. Because like I actually go back and read the the privacy policies of like what these applications and how they're leveraging the data. And so a lot of times our teachers, they're not thinking that way. They see something bright and shiny and it sounds great, but we're going to make sure that we have protection on the other side and our kids' data is protected too. So like, yeah, so you definitely want to be mindful, make sure, check in with your digital learning team or your instructional technology team that have vetted resources most times. And so definitely want to vet your resources before you implement them. There was another tool I wanted to throw in because this is something that I noticed that Google has been doing a lot of updates in their environment. And so in Google Classroom, there's 2 resources they recently updated. I think they'd be great to support a blended learning classroom or accessible and differentiated classroom that can personalize for students. And I don't know that all districts may have access right now. It really depends on the rollout and what enterprise I guess they have. But they now have it to where you can take videos from YouTube like you would do with Edpuzzle, and you can add those check my understandings in built into Google Classroom now. Yeah. And they added in practice sets where you can create these personalized learning environments for students, and where you can go in and create questions, and maybe they miss a question, they have automatically have these different resources that you can link in to kind of help with them closing the gap in that information. So it's great. But the newest thing that I love, and it has not been consistent in my environment just yet, is that Google added in a record button on the Google Slides where you can click on record. So now, hopefully, everyone will have access eventually, maybe by the time they listen to this podcast. But you can now record your Google Slides, and you can do, because a lot of teachers are using Google. A lot of our school districts are leveraging Google, have Chromebooks, and that's just the landscape we're in right now. And but I love that they're adding these features in, because we're saying that you can do all these different things, but you can also leverage tools you have access to automatically. And so I love that Google has been updating their workspace environment and classroom to kind of really help facilitate some of the needs that they're using in third-party programs. And so,
I think that's going to be awesome, once they do fully roll that out. I know it's in certain accounts. I think the biggest takeaway from that is, not only do Google want you to use their product, but they also realize that, in many school districts, the liberty of installing extensions, has been turned off, at the administrator level. And so teachers aren't able to install certain extensions, for instance, like recording. All teachers are not using Chromebooks that may have the built-in, tools and things like that. They may have a PC, they may be using Apple product. And so, with Google implementing those things in their particular app, I think that's awesome, for those that are using, are using it.
right. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap up our time today. But before you go, Sherri, if you can share your top 3 tips for our listeners to take away about accessible, differentiated, and personalized learning for all.
So the 3 tips I think I can leave you guys with, number 1, just being a forever learner. You know, uh, come out of that old school way of this is how I've been doing it all these years, and this is how I'm going to continue. Technology is always changing. The way that we teach our students today, may not work how we taught students back when we first started teaching. So just being a forever learner, that means that, seek out your education, join some webinars. There's so many webinars that are free out there that you can just sign up for. You don't forget about those PLCs, those professional learning communities that you can become a part of. Sign up for some subscriptions. Tech and Learning, for instance, comes out monthly. Awesome articles, Edutopia, things like that. So that's one tip: be a forever learner. That way you can stay on top of things. Another one would be is always make sure that you're designing learning to engage all your students. Don't just think about those students who have IEPs or modifications or behavior issues or whatever. Think about every individual in your classroom that you're responsible for, and plan for them when it comes to differentiation, when it comes to personalizing their learning, when it comes to making learning accessible for them. What does that look like? Those things I mentioned, choice boards, using that data to drive instruction, play a game or two in Kahoot, find out where they're falling short at, find out where they need to be challenged at. So just making sure that you're designing with every student in mind, every student. And I would say my last tip would probably be, don't overwhelm yourself. There's so many different tools and things that are out there that you're going to hear about, that you're going to learn about. And you're like, oh, I'm going to take it and run with it. And then you get overwhelmed and you are back to square one because, you kind of fail to actually look at the bigger picture. The bigger picture is find something, stick with it. And until you get bored with it, until the kids get bored and they stop learning, they stop engaging, and it's just redundant to them, okay, switch it up then. But rolling out 5, 10, 15 tools at one time and 20 strategies, you're going to drive yourself crazy. So, yeah, just don't overwhelm yourself. Find out what works best for you and your students and use that, capitalize on that. And then maybe switch it up, a time or two here, throughout the course of the year, and let them ease into it. Don't expect it to be perfect and run as awesome as smooth the first time you do it. So don't be so quick to give up on it. Try it again.
All right. Well, thank you, Sherri.
You're so welcome.
Well, how can our listeners connect with you beyond the podcast?
As you can see on the screen, my X handle sounds so weird saying X now, but my X handle or Twitter You can follow me at Bless ETS, and I'll have Instagram too, but I'm really not as engaged or active on there as much as I
We'll get you
should
there.
be.
We'll get you there.
But we'll
Come
get
on
there
and join the
soon.
Instagram
We'll get
train.
there soon. And then, of course, you can email me at Sherri .powell at esc4.net, or my personal email is ms.sherripowell at gmail.com.
All right, Sherri, thank you so much for joining me today again. And that's a wrap up for another lightning episode of Tech It Up Talk. So a big thank you to our incredible guest for sharing her invaluable insights. And we hope you, our listeners, have gained some fresh perspective and actionable ideas to enhance your instructional practices. But before we go, remember to connect with us and stay updated on all things Tech It Up. Follow us on your favorite social media platforms at Tech It Up Talk. Whether it's X, Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn, we want to hear from you. Share your thoughts, ideas, and suggestions for future episodes. Also, be sure to get a copy of my book, Get Your Tech Together, available on Amazon. You'll get to hear and see different things that we're discussing in the podcast as well as our guest today, Sherri Powell.